Hey guys, I'm Filup Molina, and this is a breakdown of Game of Thrones Season 6, Episode 8, No One. And so we're wrapping up this season. There's only 2 episodes left. We're about to head into Episode 9, which is always epic. Ned's beheading, Battle of the Blackwater, the Red Wedding, the Wildling attack on the wall, Shireen getting burned, Drogon saving Daenerys, all happen in Episode 9. And next week, it's the epic Battle of the Bastards, finally Snowball. That episode is so big, actually, that I've already started my analysis of it, and I cannot wait to share that with you. But this week, per tradition, the show gave us an episode 8 that stretches out that tension as much as possible before the explosive climax that we're gonna get next week. It's kind of like that game where you keep adding rubber bands to a watermelon until it explodes, which is exactly what happened in episode 8 2 seasons ago. We have so many things to point out this episode. I just gotta get into it. Let's start with the opening images. And we technically open on an image of darkness, followed by the aftermath of the murder of someone Arya hates, which perfectly mirrors what happens later with the darkness and the aftermath of the death of the Waif. But as for the opening scene itself, you probably noticed that Lady Crane took Arya's advice and she rewrote this monologue that she hated before.
Hear my prayer, oh cruel gods, take my life instead, for I cannot face another day when my sweet boy is dead. But now I seek vengeance on Sansa the whore, and my brother the imp.
Now here's what's fun about that. In our breakdown of episode 6, we talked about how the advice that Arya gave Lady Crane to ignore her orders and rewrite her own story, changing her character's journey, that was actually Arya advising herself to do the same. But rather than the show leaving it there, by having Lady Crane actually taking the advice too, the two characters continue to run parallel. There's a bit more to these parallels, but I'll mention them a little bit later. There's another interesting tidbit here. The new monologue that faux Cersei gives is actually foreshadowing the real Cersei's inner monologue later in the episode.
My son, my child, king, fight no more.
You can see real Cersei's grief over losing her son, her child king, and then you also see the same turn when she too decides to seek vengeance over those who took her from him.
But now I seek vengeance on
Sansa and Tyrion in the play, but the Tyrells and the High Sparrow in real life. As that part of the scene comes to an end, you film buffs might have recognized this tracking shot following Lady Crane backstage. It's a very specific choice made by the director, and most likely a reference to Darren Aronofsky's signature move used in the movies Black Swan and The Wrestler. These movies and this scene are about performers who put on a false identity when they're on stage, but that's what defines them. Once they leave the stage, they remained turned away from us to illustrate that when not performing, they become faceless people. They are no one. Obviously, that's the title of this episode, so it does come into play actually pretty often. Up next, we see Lady Crane discover Arya, and it's here that we realize pretty much all of those theories that everybody was wondering about regarding Arya's stabbing were not true. And I'm gonna point out that before we even told you about them, I was like, yeah, this probably is not gonna be true, but wouldn't it have been cool if it was? I will say, if you're still looking for some hope that there was more going on in that attack, the director of this episode did say, while he doesn't think there was, he made sure to also point out he doesn't technically know for sure, it's only what he thinks. The writers and the show creators could have intended something else, so it's the tiniest sliver of hope if you need some. Later, when Lady Crane tells Arya that she should be an actress, this is when the parallels in these two characters begin to diverge. Arya says,
I don't think I could remember all of the lines.
which makes sense since Arya recently suggested Lady Crane change the lines to a play, clearly not really respecting a script, but it's actually referring to Arya's inability to follow orders. She just can't. Instead, she always just improvises her own path. And so despite the fact that book Arya actually does take up this offer and goes on to play the role of Sansa in the play, show Arya declines being an actress here. And remember that acting, it's just a fill-in for the idea of being a faceless man, which is the main job that Arya has now decided not to do. But it's not until the end of the episode that she chooses who she wants to actually be instead.
A girl is Arya Stark of Winterfell.
Side note, this line was super meta because obviously Maisie Williams, the actress, has no problem remembering lines, except ironically, according to the actress, when somebody recommended to her that she should try out acting, she said the exact same thing Arya did, that she wouldn't be able to remember the lines. Also, did you catch the Sansa actress's name? It's Bianca, one of the few times in Game of Thrones that they've picked a pretty normal name from our world, and that's because it's probably a reference to the Biancas in the plays of William Shakespeare. In Othello, Bianca's a super jealous girl, and later she's accused of murdering the object of her jealousy. And in the other, it's Bianca in Taming of the Shrew, and she's ready to step out into the spotlight, but she's specifically being blocked by her older, sassy, but brilliant sister. So they both feel pretty familiar. Oh, and did you catch the other parallel between Lady Crane and Arya? How did Lady Crane deal with the girl that wanted her dead? She robbed her of her pretty face. Great minds think alike. Now, before we move on, I just want to point out this kind of interesting thing that Arya said about what she might do now. She wants to go west of Westeros because no one knows what's out there. Apparently, people think it's the edge of the world, and that's a reference to our own history. When we were getting close to the end of the Middle Ages, people decided to try to prove there was more to the world. You just had to go further west. And just as Westeros and Essos represent Europe and Asia, it's possible that Arya's journey, potentially one that would maybe take place after the show is over, could have her discovering the Westerosi equivalent of America. It would be a good connection to her direwolf's namesake, NYMERIA, which, by the way, if you're new here, I think that all direwolf names predict the owner's story, and NYMERIA was actually famous for establishing a new colony. That is what Dorne turned out to be. So yeah, maybe Arya's gonna establish a new American-style colony. Let's move on. We've got this scene with this poor bastard who twice in a row does not see what is about to hit him. Once it's a finger in his butt, and then it's a freaking axe, and both are so embarrassing for him. The out of focus killer in the background feels a lot like a shot from a horror movie, like that's Jason or something, or in that recent movie actually, It Follows. And the director uses it because he knows that it builds tension like crazy, and he actually uses it again with the Waif later. Oh, and that guy that got his butt penetrated, that's fellow YouTuber Steve Love. He's famous for doing Game of Thrones impressions.
I thought for sure that I was dead.
So it's pretty cool that now he can technically start doing an impression of his own character, though they probably wouldn't let him post it on YouTube.
Yeah. And you jam it right up her bunghole.
Oi, you!
Later we get this scene with Varys and Tyrion, and we find out Varys is leaving town on some secret mission. And first of all, if you're wondering where he's going, well, in the books, he's got one thing really interesting left to do in King's Landing, which I'm not going to spoil, but also I have a feeling he's actually not going back there. He said he needs to gain more support for Daenerys.
We need friends in Westeros.
And so who in Westeros could possibly support putting a Targaryen in command over a Lannister? Boom. Dorne. That is my guess, at least. We haven't seen Ellaria or the Sand Snake since the first episode of the season, but I definitely think we're gonna see them before the season's over. It could be in a scene where Varys tries to recruit them. Oh, and the second thing I wanted to say about Varys leaving, is it just a coincidence that he leaves moments before Daenerys gets back, but he also previously arrived moments after Daenerys left? Is he avoiding her? Like, is he scared of her or something? Again, it could be a coincidence, but he also narrowly avoids the attack from the slavers. I don't know if I believe this idea that Varys could be the Harpy trying to use the Sons of Harpy to make Daenerys leave Meereen earlier and take Westeros already, but I definitely gotta put this into the suspicious column. Moving on, we get this scene with Cersei and Qyburn, and there was this really vague moment when Cersei asked who told the Faith Militant that they could come into her area, the Red Keep, and Qyburn just stays quiet. A bunch of people interpreted this moment pretty differently, but my guess is that it's some version of the High Sparrow having authority these days that he never had before, because of this union he has with Tommen. It's either he gave the permission himself, or he just really easily manipulated the crown into permitting them in. But actually, whatever, who cares, because they're there and these idiots do not realize what is waiting there for them. You remember that Mountain Viper fight from episode 8 2 years ago? So it's fitting that episode 8 this year has the mountain ripping off a guy's head, but from the front. It's very terrifying, but it's also kind of impressive to do it in that direction. This image definitely leaves Cersei feeling content, but she doesn't realize actually that this moment, her choosing violence here, it's actually yet another example of her bringing about her own downfall. Because it's actually not very well known just what exactly is going on with the mountain. People know Cersei has this guy, but as far as they know, he's a mentally challenged, rotting corpse. He hasn't attacked anyone out in the open yet, just secretly. But this show of force here, the fact that Cersei has an unstoppable Franken Mountain, that's what Lancel can go report back to the High Sparrow, probably while washing poop out of his tunic because he looked terrified. He is lucky that it was already brown. But had she shown some restraint and just had the conversation with the Sparrow, they may not have known that he's this freaking monster, and maybe the Sparrow wouldn't have had Tommen ban trials by combat. Also, quick thing to point out before we move on, the shot of the blood going down the drain into the sewers of King's Landing, I think it's just a reminder that there are these full tunnels beneath the city that are easily forgotten about. We'll come back to why that's important later. Okay, so let's skip ahead to Bronn joking with Pod about whether or not Jamie and Brienne are banging.
You think they're f***ing?
I know it comes off as just like a simple jokey scene, maybe to lighten the tension, but actually there's some pretty clever storytelling at play here, because the very next scene is between Jamie and Brienne, and it's this very technical scene about the logistics of a siege, the facts of their situation. They talk strategy and politics. If you imagine it between Jamie and some random knight, you'll see what I mean. It's very straightforward.
I was sent here to reclaim River Run, currently defended by the Tully rebels, so you can see the conundrum.
The Tullys are rebels because they're fighting for their home?
River Run was granted to the Freys by royal decree.
But because they gave us this Bronn scene right before this moment, he tells us that he thinks these two want to bang. It gives this scene a whole lot of sexual tension, and it adds this subtext to everything they're saying.
Honor compels me to fight for Sansa's kin.
Of course it does.
To fight you.
Let's hope it doesn't come to that.
Every time there's a pause, you feel like they're gonna like tear each other's clothes off. Or Bronn is just gonna come in and be like, eh? Eh? You guys gonna, Ah. Anyway, it's for that reason, that filter that Bronn gave us, that I think what is really happening here when Brienne tries to give Oathkeeper back to Jamie, it's not about the sword for him, it's about his heart. Listen again with that in mind.
It's yours. It will always be yours.
Aside from the rekindling of a romance here, this scene is about the two things that pull at Jamie Lannister. The angel and the devil on his shoulders. His angel, Brienne, talks to him like he's Darth Vader and she's Luke Skywalker, telling him he's still got some honor in him.
I know there is good in you.
You're a knight, Sir Jamie. I know there is honor in you.
Meanwhile, on the other shoulder is the devil by way of Tywin Lannister, or maybe the evil emperor if we're gonna keep mixing metaphors. But I know he's not literally there in that room, but these tents with their fancy furniture out on the battlefield, the way Jamie's dressed, it's like Tywin's ghost is in this room. Actually, you could interpret that empty armor as Tywin's ghost right there. It's exactly like his. Each time Jamie dons those, he's choosing to step into that Tywin role. And Tywin always wanted Jamie to be a Lannister, not a white knight. Tywin would want him to win by any means necessary. Remember, the Red Wedding was his idea, but it's actually Brienne who suggested Jamie to take the castle without any bloodshed, and that is what he tries to do. So clearly, he wants to listen to the angel and be the good guy, but I think when he hears that the Blackfish has been killed, he knows he's failed to do what she wanted, and that's why he waves goodbye to her so sadly. Because he's resigned, he's not just waving goodbye to this woman that he probably loves, but he's resigned to just his own honor and nobility that she represents is also leaving. He just can't seem to be the good guy. We'll talk more later about the man that Jamie wants to be versus the callous jerk that he's choosing to play right now, but you can see a hint of this when he talks about how girls like Sansa
Don't live very long.
Brienne hears it as kind of like, what a dick thing to say, and she gives her retort,
I don't think you know many girls like her.
but deep down, Jamie probably was just thinking of his own daughter Myrcella, who's a lot like what Sansa at least used to be like, the precious princess type. He really meant it. Nice girls don't get to survive in this world. Now moving on to Brienne trying to talk the Blackfish into joining Sansa and Jon, if you're wondering what this letter says, we were only able to slightly enhance this one, but basically it seems as if the top part is just establishing who is sending the letter, Lady Sansa of Winterfell, maybe Lady of the North or something, but the second part is her quickly recapping her story and then appealing to him as family, talking about her mom, his sister, and asking for his help to avenge their family. She keeps bringing up family, and that's a smart move actually. Sansa knows that the Tully words are family, duty, honor, and family is supposed to come first in that list. A lot of people try to use those words against the Tully men throughout the episode, and I'll point them out as they come. Anyway, Brienne's ass doesn't even work, and we're back in King's Landing. This is that moment when Kevin and Tommen kind of backhand Cersei, but touching on our themes again, note that Cersei expects that she gets to sit in the VIP area for royals, and Kevin banishes her to stand with the women of the gallery. To Cersei, this is like the utmost insult, because he just effectively stripped her of her title, her royalty, her identity, and now it's as if she's just another anonymous face in the crowd. She's become no one. Cersei then finds out that trial by combat is off the table, and like I said earlier, that's clearly the work of the High Sparrow, and you can tell that Tommen is actually really struggling with this. It's rare that we even see him sitting on the throne, and that combined with this decree, which he knows is going to ruin his mother, has him very nervous. Check out that fidgeting hand. But he shouldn't feel so bad. It's all Cersei's fault, really. Not just this trial by combat thing, but the situation that she's in. Remember, she's the one that put the faith into a higher state of power in King's Landing. This line that Tommen says,
"The faith and the crown are the two pillars that hold up this world."
he's not just quoting the High Sparrow. The High Sparrow actually said that when he was quoting Cersei.
The faith and the crown are the two pillars that hold up this world.
She's the one that said that. And so when she hears it now, she just feels that sting of her own scheming working against her. Two other ironies to point out here is one, this backstabbing that Cersei's feeling from a Lannister. It would sting so much harder if she could hear the score that's playing right now. It's the Rains of Castamere, the song that plays when Lannisters have beaten someone, often using some sort of trickery. The other irony is that Tommen has just banned trial by combat because it's a corrupt way to avoid justice. But on this show, the only two times we've seen an accused person choose trial by combat, it was by Tyrion, who was innocent both times and was being judged by corrupt courts both times. So get your facts straight, Tommen. Also interesting that in the episode where Tommen bans trial by combat, we actually see almost no combat. The Riverrun siege is essentially bloodless, and the two big fights you expect to see this episode, Arya versus the Waif and the takedown of the Blackfish, they both happen off screen. And then in terms of general violence, you can't even really call what the Clegane brothers did battles, because they didn't even end up like breathing hard during what they did. The Mountain actually might not breathe at all, actually. But it's like Tommen banned all combat this episode. It's a good thing episode 9 is right around the corner. And did you catch that Cersei's trial is gonna take place during
The Festival of the Mother.
There's a chance that Tommen thought that was a good date because the mother is known for her mercy, but he probably didn't catch that that's just one more thing to rub in Cersei's face. You just put your mother on trial during the Festival of the Mother. That's like having your mom arrested on Mother's Day. Maybe pick a different day. Not that I know why your mom is being arrested. If it's serious, maybe it should be that day. Anyway, so what options does Cersei have now? Well, here's something. She's being charged with all sorts of things, and fornication is one of them, but she isn't specifically being charged with incest with Jamie. But if she decided to go ahead and admit to that, well, that would call Tommen's kingship into question, and it would probably result in him losing the crown. That's very intense, and it would totally shake things up, since the Faith actually need Tommen to be in power for them to have power. Now, if you think that's too crazy, well, you probably aren't familiar with Cersei's other option, and that's that rumor that Qyburn is talking to Cersei about.
Is it just a rumor or something more?
Oh. Much more.
Let's go ahead and activate theory time. Feel free to skip to this time if you don't want to know what we think will happen, but we don't know if it's gonna happen. All right, ready? Here goes. So you've heard this from us for a while now, that we think Cersei is going to set fire to some or all of King's Landing to try to take out some enemies or maybe everyone. But let's just add some new points to this theory. 1, if you're thinking that Cersei wouldn't risk hurting her son, remember that I think she believes she's already lost him, both to the faith and to the prophecy that says he's gonna die. And if you remember, the last time Cersei felt cornered like this, she was about to give Tommen poison, so she's not past killing her own child. Side note, in case you're wondering, yes, that's a different actor playing Tommen then. I guess they had to age him up when he took over as king. 2, a lot of people forget that it was actually Cersei who ordered the pyromancers to make all that wildfire in those green pots.
We have been working tirelessly, day and night, ever since your royal sister commanded us to do so.
It wasn't Tyrion. Tyrion just orders them to keep making it for him now. But Cersei had already been planning to not just use it against the ships like Tyrion did, but she was gonna use it against the men themselves on land, which even Bronn knew was just way too dangerous and could burn the whole city down.
I remember reading an old sailor's proverb. Piss on wildfire and your cock burns off.
Oh.
If you pee on it, your penis catches on fire. That's too dangerous, Cersei. Also, there's more precedent because in the books, Cersei burned down the Tower of the Hand using wildfire just because she hated looking at it after Tywin was killed there. 4, you remember that pyro montage we had of Cersei last episode?
I would burn cities to the ground.
Now go ahead and tack on this new Jamie line about Cersei and burning stuff.
Start a war, Burn cities to ash, free their worst enemies.
But the reason why we think the rumor is about the wildfyre, it's been unclear how much there was and how much got used at the Battle of the Blackwater. And it's also unclear if the Mad King really had a bunch put under different parts of the city in the tunnels, including right under the Great Sept of Baelor, the home of the faith. But now we're reminded that the tunnels exist, and I just remembered that Qyburn started hearing little tidbits about the possibility that the Mad King was gonna burn the whole city down a long time ago. Jamie first hinted at it way back in season 3.
How many lives have you saved?
500,000, the population of King's Landing.
These rumors have been building up for a long time. And then here's a new addition to this theory. If Cersei's gonna try to burn her enemies and potentially all of King's Landing with them, will it be up to Jamie to stop her? Killing her like he did the Mad King? He's done the exact same thing before, and he is searching for honor. I know you might think that Jamie would never kill Cersei, but I will remind you, when Jamie told Brienne about the Mad King way back when in that delicious hot tub, he asked Brienne what she would have done if she knew that Renly was gonna burn an entire city.
If your precious Renly commanded you to kill your own father and stand by while thousands of men, women, and children burned alive, would you have done it?
Jamie is suggesting that even if he was in love with the ruler like Brienne was with Renly, he still probably would have had to have saved everyone. So I think that means he would kill Cersei. But what do you think? Do you think he would do it? Personally, I wonder if he'd somehow end up dying with her, maybe? But here's the bigger reason why Jamie might kill Cersei. The prophecy about Cersei's children dying, in the books, it also has more to it. It says that Cersei will die, being choked by the Valonqar. That's the High Valyrian word for little brother. It used to seem like that would be Tyrion, who clearly hates Cersei and loves choking. And while technically the prophecy could apply to any little brother in the world, it would be pretty poetic if it were her twin brother, her little brother, just because he was born a few moments after her. So now what do you think? It's interesting, right? All right, let's jump out of theory time. Okay, now before we get into the totally crazy stuff that's coming and the missable details for the rest of the episode, I want to use this moment to fill you in on a little tradition I have in my house, where every week I rearrange my Game of Thrones House Sigil magnets that I got from Lootcrate into the latest power rankings. And I've been doing this for the last 2 seasons, and you would be surprised how often this shifts. And I think we should start doing these in these recaps. So after last week, let's see. Okay, so Arya was dying, and Jon and Sansa were denied by the Glovers, and meanwhile Daenerys had her badass speech moment recently, so she's on top, then the Starks, and then, yeah, the Lannisters had a setback, but it wasn't so bad, they're basically fine. Meanwhile, their setback is Tom and Baratheon being totally brainwashed by the High Sparrow. So in terms of power, he in a way has none. He's completely under someone else's thumb. So that's where I had it last week. But this week, technically Tom and Baratheon shows that he has more power than the Lannisters, so sorry. Though I do know that the Faith are really the ones behind it, but I don't have a Faith magnet, so whatever. And the Lannisters, they've been like super depressed this episode. Like we'll get to Tyrion, but all of them are very depressed this episode, so they actually shift to the bottom spot. Then Daenerys is barely in this episode, but when she shows up, she's kind of dumbfounded and her city's under attack. So yeah, we're gonna slide that Targaryen down to number 2. And then like I've been predicting all season, the Starks are coming out on top with Arya's antics and her badass name declaration at the end, putting them to the number 1 spot. So now we got Stark, Targaryen, Baratheon, Lannister. They're not often on the bottom, but they definitely are at the end of this episode. Oh, and at the end of the video, we're gonna do a giveaway, and you're gonna get these same magnets if you want. Plus, I'm also gonna send you my own personal Loot Crate exclusive Stark Direwolf USB flash drive. I'm gonna load it with a bunch of surprise stuff. I'm gonna pick it myself. I'm also gonna put a bonus video in there made by me, Erik, and Kylo, and it's gonna be made just for you, whoever wins that. And we're actually giving away other things too, but I'll tell you about that more at the end. The reason that we are getting to do all this though is because our friends at Lootcrate are sponsoring this week's breakdown of Game of Thrones, and they are totally hooking us up. I've actually been subscribed to Lootcrate for years. I'm a huge fan, but if you've never heard of it, it's amazing. It's this monthly subscription box service where they send you these geeky or gamer or general pop culture things, and it's always around some sort of theme, but it's the exact kind of stuff that we love on this channel. Marvel, Star Star Wars, Walking Dead, etc. So like these things are part of a Game of Thrones box that I got last year. They had other Game of Thrones stuff in it too. And it's funny because if you could see the office from where I am standing, you would see that the room is literally filled with the cool stuff we get from Lootcrate, and it's all kinds of stuff. Like here's Batman, right? This book is from Lootcrate. This Terminator skull is from Lootcrate. My Rick and Morty puzzle that I haven't done yet. Oh, that poster is from Lootcrate. Oh, we have a bunch of badass pop figurines from them. That's the joy of it. Every month you get something like 6 to 8 items. It's all cool nerd stuff, and the box actually costs less than $20, but the stuff inside is always worth more than $40. So it's obviously a good deal, but also because Lootcrate is being incredibly nice to us, if you use our link, it's lootcrate.com/rockstars, and our code, which is also Rockstars, they'll take 10% off the boxes. Oh, they also said to tell you that if you want to get in on the June box, which has the theme of dystopia, which I love because I'm super into stuff after the apocalypse, then you have to sign up by the 19th, June 19th at 9 p.m. Pacific time. You can still get the percentage off after that date, but you'll miss out on the cool dystopian box, which I'm excited about, and you'll have to get the next one. Anyway, stick around for the end of the video where I'll talk about the giveaway and tell you the other cool stuff that we're giving away. But in general, if you like nerdy stuff, sign up using our link, and also say thanks to Lootcrate if you happen to see them somewhere. They are very famous for helping out the little guys on YouTube. Even from the very beginning of their company, I've always been aware of them. I've been signed up for a long time. And since they were nice enough to help us make today's video, then if you're supporting them, you really are pretty directly supporting us. So thank you in advance, but let's keep going. We jump over to Meereen, where Tyrion hosts this really awkward party with Missandei and Grey Worm. And did you catch this sad moment for Tyrion, by the way, when he describes his dream of drinking wine with all his closest friends? That face he makes is because Tyrion realizes he has no friends. That's such a terrible thing to realize, but especially considering Varys just left, he really is left with no one. No family or friends. And considering how this big peace deal that he supposedly made falls apart in just a few moments, you can see what I meant about Tyrion being just as depressed as his siblings are this episode, and why the Lannisters had to go down in the power rankings. Oh, and speaking of how things go for Tyrion's plan, there was this little weird word riddle that was going on with the episode description and what happens in this scene. HBO said Tyrion's plans bear fruit, and often they try to be kind of clever with their wording. So wine is often referred to as fermented fruit, which is what Tyrion is trying to explain to Grey Worm, but Grey Worm thinks of it as fruit that's probably turned, like it's gone bad, it's rotten.
Tastes like it has turned.
Yes, yes. Fermentation.
So while Tyrion thinks his plans are going perfectly, bearing fruit, and that rotting is actually just fermentation, it's tasty wine now, Grey Worm actually sees the plans for what they are. They're rotted fruit, and he's right. The slavers didn't fall for Tyrion's lies, and now they're attacking.
The slavers'
No more
forces...
talking from you. Your talking gave us this.
Now, even though I was pretty hopeful for Tyrion in this situation, I gotta remind you that we pointed out a few episodes ago, the calls told Daenerys that the slavers knew that they had her captive. So that meant that when Tyrion told some story about Daenerys just being away, the slavers already knew he was lying. And even worse, when they saw there was just Tyrion, who to them is just some random imp, and 2 slaves that seemed to be running Meereen, like this entire city, they knew to go back to their cities and get their ships because now is the perfect time to attack. So unfortunately, it all kind of backfired on him. That's all a downer though, so let's touch on the comedy of this scene and this episode actually really quick. This episode actually had a lot more jokes and practical jokes than they usually do. And I don't mean like funny lines, I mean the characters on the show were trying to break the tension in their world with a joke. In each case, the comedy is actually telling us about the joke teller themselves. The Brotherhood guys pull the butthole joke because they're a bunch of depraved buttholes. Bronn joke attacks Pod, reminding us that he's a dirty fighter and a trickster. Kevin Lannister makes this sarcastic joke to show Cersei just how little respect he has for her demands.
There's to be a royal announcement. Why wasn't I informed?
There is to be a royal announcement in the throne room at this very moment.
Missandei's joke is about translators and the fact that when it comes down to a life or death situation, yeah, she fears that her skill set actually isn't that useful.
Do you know how to swim? No, but I can shout for help in 19 languages.
Grey Worm, yeah, he knows jokes, but he reminds us he's a soldier who doesn't really have time for levity. And then there's Tyrion's joke about the Lannister, the Martell, and the Stark.
Martell plucks the fly out and swallows it whole. The Stark
reaches into his cup, pulls out the fly and shouts, "Spit it out, you wee shit! Spit it out!"
So first off, this is another bit that's ripped off from our real world, except it's usually an Englishman, an Irishman, and a Scot. But the point of the joke is that the Lannisters are spoiled and overly classy, the Martells are impulsive, and they don't give a fly about what anyone thinks of them, and the Starks are dumb and obsessed with honor, both because they think that they could talk to a fly, and that the honorable thing to do would be to have the fly return the ale that it drank. Man, isn't it a lot of fun to explain jokes? That sucks. But anyway, the point is that Tyrion's joke reminds us that he has no respect for that entire system of houses ruling in Westeros. However, it also reminds us that he's still very fascinated by the houses and their reputation, which makes sense because he's a famous product of one of the most prominent houses. Also, the other joke that Tyrion tries to tell,
Once walked into a brothel with a honeycomb and a jackass.
well, it's actually a callback to the same joke Tyrion tried to tell way back in season 1.
I once brought a jackass and a honeycomb into a brothel.
He doesn't get to finish it then either, though. Adorable little freakazoid Robin is desperate to know how it ends. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the whole series ends with Tyrion telling this joke. And considering it has to do with brothels and honeycombs and donkeys, I would also not be surprised if the punchline has something to do with a sweet ass. That's my guess. Now, before we move on, I just want to point out something about Grey Worm. Even though he wants to be the soldier that has no time for comedy, he cracks that smile and then he even laughs. This right here, this is the entirety of Grey Worm's character arc in one moment. He was raised as a killing machine, never meant to feel or connect with anyone, and here he's laughing alongside a woman that he's probably developed feelings for. He's taking a moment to live a vibrant, colorful life rather than this pale existence of a Grey Worm. And that's why, I hate to say this, but I think Grey Worm is gonna die. I know that is kind of out of nowhere, but whenever I feel like we see a character arc complete, this happens all the time on Walking Dead, I feel like that's it for that character. Like, I gotta say, if I'm right, I am gonna miss the guy. I didn't think I would, but I've grown weirdly attached to that little eunuch. Hopefully I'm wrong, but let's start heading into the final scenes of the episode. We go back to Riverrun and we get this very interesting scene with Jamie and Edmure. So you remember that this episode is all about choosing your identity. Are you no one or are you someone? And if you are someone, who is the someone you choose to be? So note how both Bronn and Edmure talk about Jamie's good looks and specifically his face. That's another connection to the acting we talked about earlier and how actors wear faces, which is why poor little Bianca could never be an actress again. And like how all faceless men act as other people, they wear literal faces while they do it. Jamie wears the face of a handsome man, the knight in shining armor type. He looks like Prince Charming. But the reason Edmure is totally fascinated by this is because according to him, Jamie's the opposite of that. He's a disgusting, vile creature. It's kind of like the Portrait of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. It's a story about a man who stays young and handsome while he secretly is keeping his soul inside of a portrait of himself that grows older and more hideous to illustrate how corrupt the man has become inside. But here's the thing about Jamie. He knows this about himself. He knows it better than anyone else. So he actually, in this moment, does something very subtle. He pretends to be Jamie the villain in order to be Jamie the honorable. A lot of people said after this episode, oh, Jamie's back to being like he was in season 1 or 2. I don't agree. I think he's putting on the face of that Jamie, but he's faking it. He's acting. Jamie threatens every Tully and has that crazy line, which is from the books, by the way, about
I'll send for your baby boy, and I'll launch him into Riverrun with a catapult.
And to even further underline how much Jamie is playing the old villainous part, he even quotes himself from the pilot.
Things we do for love.
Things I do for love.
In reality, old villainous Jamie wouldn't have only made this threat, he would have killed men to make his point. He probably would have already sent for the baby. He'd probably be torturing Edmure too. Instead, he makes a calculated move to step up to Brienne's challenge. If he plays his cards right, yeah, his reputation is probably gonna take another hit, but it's already garbage. And if he can take the castle without any bloodshed, he'll prove Brienne right, and maybe he does have some honor in him still. It's a lot like his killing of the Mad King, something that looked terrible and something Ned Stark always judged him for, but something that was actually done for an honorable reason. And his threats are again based on Tully words. Note that, like Sansa's letter, he specifically hammers home the point about Edmure's family. His baby and all the Tully family he has will be killed. He threatens him with that rather than threaten Edmure anymore personally, and it works. And this manipulating based on the Tully words actually keeps working, because when the Tully men take Edmure's orders, even though they all obviously know it's a trap, they are honoring the second word of their house, duty. They don't have the option of not listening to him, they must obey. It is their duty. And so, as we then move on to the Blackfish and Brienne trying to convince him to come with her, we finally get what part of the Tully words drives him. He showed last episode when he said that they could kill Edmure and he wouldn't care, that family no longer drives him. Which makes sense that later when Brienne asks him to do right by his blood, aka family, he declines.
Don't die for pride when you can fight for your blood.
And we know he doesn't feel any sense of duty to Edmure, as he feels like he's probably the guy that should be calling the shots, not him. So it's the third Tully word that drives him now, honor. He wants to maintain his honor, and he wants to salvage it actually. It was really quick, but he reminds us he ran away from the Red Wedding and he feels a lot of shame over it. That's why he wants to go down this way, in a battle protecting his home. It doesn't matter that he's already lost it. To him, it's a way to regain his honor. Brienne refers to it as pride, and she's probably right, honestly. The Blackfish is being stubbornly proud, but that is who he is. What's funny is that the reason he's called the Blackfish is because he was the outcast of that house, and he and Catelyn's dad, the former Lord Tully, hated each other because the Blackfish thought that he was too stubborn.
Your father was a stubborn old ox.
So it seems like they were actually probably just too similar. Here's a fun side note, by the way. The very next scene in that episode that I was just showing where Brendan talks about Catelyn's dad, that's Robb's wife, Talisa, caring for a Lannister boy. Does he look familiar? He looks like Tommen, right? Except nope.
You're a Lannister, aren't you?
Martin Lannister.
So not only was Tommen played by a different actor a few seasons back, but the actor that plays Tommen now, he was already on the show playing a different Lannister. I think that's so ridiculous, but also I'm impressed that I didn't notice for a long time. Anyway, I already mentioned that despite the major tactical victory, when Jamie finds out that there was bloodshed and one of his heroes has died, he knows he failed to live up to Brienne's goal for him. Though I'm sure she'd actually understand. She saw how stubborn he was being, but Jamie doesn't understand. So from his perspective, he thinks that he probably just is the bad guy whose face he was wearing during that scene with Edmure. So him waving goodbye to Brienne is also him waving goodbye to the honorable version of Jamie that could be with her. Yet at the same time, there's hope, because just like how Vader saves Luke, Jamie letting Brienne and Pod go, that shows there's still good in him. I think the whole point of this River Run story was to show Jamie this other side to him exists, and while he clearly thinks that he can't have it or he doesn't deserve it, he's definitely gotten a taste of it now, and considering what we think Cersei is probably planning back home, I would not be surprised if he does get back there and suddenly there's trouble in paradise for that couple. Okay, and who else is hoping that Brienne and Pod are just gonna bump into Gendry on his rowboat path? That's just me. I want to know what happened to him, that's all. So after Dany returns to Meereen for a split second, we see the Hound finally catch up with the original Brotherhood without banners and the familiar faces of Thoros of Myr and Beric Dondarrion. And I told you last time that if we saw Beric, it meant that we probably were not gonna get the crazy other new leader of the Brotherhood that would be amazing. So I'll just go ahead and tell you that would have been Lady Stoneheart. And if you don't want to be spoiled, just don't Google anything about who that is, and editors, let's not show too clear of a picture here, but basically she's terrifying, but super interesting. And since Beric is still there, we're probably never gonna get her on the show. And actually, it was really obvious that the showrunners knew that we were wondering about this, because they dropped hints to the character all episode long. If you know her story, you heard the hints they were dropping. And in the books, the person is pulled out of the river right by where this Brotherhood is. So when we saw the river, and it kind of looks like a last chance for Lady Stoneheart to appear, instead the show gave us this.
True enough.
So that seems like a pretty clear, no, we're not gonna do that story. Anyway, two quick other things to point out here. When the Hound steals Lem's boots before he's even done dying, one, in the books, Lem actually stole the Hound's helmet, so this is a reversal of that. But two, the Hound is actually acting out an exact part of Brother Ray's Broken Man speech. If they want new boots, they need to take them from a corpse. Even though the Hound is exactly the guy Brother Ray thought he was, the Broken Man, it's not until Beric tries to recruit the Hound that it actually all starts to click click for him, and he can see a potential path to redemption here. That makes sense because 1, Brother Ray believed violence wasn't necessary, and unfortunately in this world, as the Hound knows, and now Brother Ray knows, that doesn't work. But 2, the Hound actually believes that Berg knows something about coming back because he actually saw the guy do it and it blew his freaking mind. And it all touches on our theme too about choosing your identity, as Jamie chose to play the role of the Kingslayer, and in a moment Arya will choose to stop playing roles and embrace the person that is Arya Stark. But the Hound, he's choosing to go in the middle. He's not exactly the Hound anymore. He's showing restraint. He's not killing all these guys.
There's a time I would have killed all 7 of you just to gut these 3.
But he hasn't found some amazing new persona he wants to embrace, so instead he joins up with a group who literally has no banners, meaning they belong to no one. So they're all no one, and the Hound is choosing to go with that for the time being. And it's funny because, like I said last episode, he and Arya just keep having these inverse stories from each other. Now I actually liked what this scene was setting up because 1, I'm really excited to see these guys march north actually, as it's going to be an interesting addition to have them also want to battle against the White Walkers. But another thing I liked here is Sandor talking about his interest in chicken.
Enjoying yourself? I prefer chicken.
It's a nice callback to the time that he killed a bunch of guys because he wanted to eat some chicken.
Bring me one of those chickens.
You got money?
Not a penny. Think I'll take 2 chickens.
You don't seem to understand the situation.
If any more words come pouring out your mouth, I'm gonna have to eat every chicken in this room.
Okay, and finally the episode ends where we started, back in Braavos. We get this chase scene, and the director admitted that he watched some very famous chase scenes to inspire him here, and while he didn't say which ones, I think it's pretty clear that he borrowed a lot from Terminator 2, with the Waif's running style and her eerily calm performance. But there was also some inspiration from the Bourne Identity and its famous shaky cam chases. Note though that when we are feeling the Waif's perspective, it's pretty calm and steady, and then when we're in Arya's world, it's more of the shaky cam style. She just has a lot less control over what she's doing right now. But another famous film reference that the director made, he actually admits he did it by accident. He didn't intend to do it at the time, but he totally agrees that it makes sense and that maybe he was subconsciously doing it. These oranges. Ever since The Godfather, oranges have famously been used by filmmakers as a way to signal a death that's about to happen. The director says that he actually did want to make that exact moment right there, the moment that the chase goes from a rapid run to a slow march toward what feels like Arya's impending death. So he made an accidental perfect film reference to set that up, I guess. Happy coincidence. But also, this is where the misdirect starts to begin, because when Arya sees the blood, she realizes she's bleeding again, but she also gets her idea to purposely leave a trail for the Waif to follow back to her hideout. And as we predicted, she uses the benefit of darkness to take out that annoying girl. I hope she just pulled her face off. Okay, I hope that's how she killed her. And this takes us to our closing images, and I feel like I already kind of explained what they mean. It's the second half of Arya's earlier rejection of being an actor, with Arya then choosing to step away from being no one, but in this moment, she finishes it by choosing who she will be instead.
A girl is Arya Stark of Winterfell.
It's nicely matched with the opening images of the parallel character of the actress playing a role, but then choosing to go off book and taking off her mask to reveal her true self. But instead of just wrapping up here, I'm actually going to point out a few other interesting things I noticed. First, as of this moment, Arya, Jon, Sansa, and Bran, they've all been freed from their obligations. They've all returned to being Stark children and have decided to all start heading back to home to reclaim what is theirs, be it Winterfell, or their identity, or their little brother, or their mission. So Arya saying,
I'm going home.
There's a nice connection to Sansa and Jon realizing that there's only one place for them to go too.
Where will we go? There's only one place we can go. Home.
But this is actually illustrated visually too by purposely mirroring the exact same framing for when Jon Snow quit his job and eventually decided to re-embrace his Stark heritage. And another quick thing, one of the faces on the wall, it's Bill Simmons. He's the guy who created The Ringer, which is the company that is behind After the Thrones, that show on HBO. He's also the guy in all of those Bill Simmons HBO commercials. But anyway, more interesting than that, I want to point out, I'll go ahead and call it a theory, but I think we're too late in the video for another theory time. I want you to pay attention to what we're shown in these final moments. Jaqen comes into the main room of the House of Black and White, and he sees large puddles of blood tracking across the floor. We did just see Arya bleeding a lot, realizing she's probably reopened her stab wounds, and we saw Arya in lots of pain moments ago, confirming that she's definitely still injured. But Jaqen and the camera follows these puddles forward to the pool. And this is the same pool that is known to be poisoned and kills those who drink from it. Then Jaqen goes down some steps into another area and he finds the blood dripping again, though note that these drops are definitely much smaller than they were over by the entrance. They lead to the Waif space up on the wall. Now again, this might not be anything at all actually, but I want to acknowledge the possibility that what actually happened here was that Arya came back to this place with the Waif space and she purposely took a big swig of water from this pool. Because if you remember, even though the pool poisoned some, for some reason its magic healed Arya's blindness a few episodes ago. And so yeah, if she's guessing correctly, then it would have healed her wounds and stopped her from bleeding. And then that remaining blood that we see is just the lesser drips of the Waif space as Arya walks it to the wall. And this would explain why after we saw her moments earlier having just torn open her wounds, hunched over in pain, Arya is now walking through this scene like she's got 12 hours of sleep and like Deadpool's healing abilities. She seems great. So I'm not gonna put my money on this theory being true, but they definitely did focus on that pool for a long time. So maybe nothing, maybe something. Let me know what you think about that in the comments, but also some questions here, followed by, I'll give you more details about the giveaway in a second. One, there's a good chance that Arya is going to pick up her list again when she gets to Westeros. Who do you think she's gonna kill first? If she's fast enough, she can take out Walder Frey while he's still relevant to the story, but also Beric and Thoros are also on that list. And lucky for them, they just reappeared. So where do you think she's gonna head and who do you think she's gonna kill? Two, if you know the Lady Stoneheart stuff, do you think it'll ever happen or is it just definitely dead? No pun intended. Also, Clegane Bowl. It got squashed by the no trial by combat rule, but is that still gonna happen? Personally, I actually feel like, yeah, I think so, but probably not this season. But I've been saying that for a while, so we'll see. Three, I brought this up earlier, but what do you think Varys is up to? Like, I told you my Dorne theory, but do you think he's going on some other secret mission? Also, do you think his timing to leave is suspicious or weird? It kind of feels like he's avoiding Daenerys.
She'll come back. She has to.
Okay, now the giveaway stuff. First off, thank you again to Lootcrate for helping us to do all of this. I'm actually gonna go ahead and open my May gear while I tell you about this stuff. I haven't seen this yet actually, but I'm super excited. I've also got a LVLup crate to check out, which is nerd clothes. Sometimes you guys ask me where I get my nerdy shirts, and that's often where I get them from. It's also from Loot Crate. Oh, I dropped it. Okay, well, I'm very pumped for next month's dystopia theme because for some reason I'm really into the aftermath of like apocalyptic stuff, Fallout and Mad Max and whatnot. I just love when the world gets destroyed. Remember that if you want the dystopia stuff, which is June, you would have to sign up before the 19th by 9 p.m. Our sign up link should be on the screen right now. It's lootcrate.com/rockstars, and make sure to use our Rockstars code so you get the 10% off. Ooh, this stands out right away. Boom. So this is what I'm talking about. Like they just send you like legit figurines and stuff, but it's not always just figurines. This is a metal die-cast version of the Iron Man Mach 5 suit. It lights up too. They've got all the like Civil War ones too. This is so much bigger than every other pop figure I have. He can just reign over them all. That said, he didn't exactly win Civil War, so I don't know. Oh, how perfectly well timed. Because who did win Civil War? If you're a big fan of Cap or Caps, this is a Captain America hat. It's a Loot Crate exclusive, actually. I actually don't like hats. Never been into hats. I'm kidding. I love hats. But if you, which reminds me, so this giveaway is something special that Loot Crate and I actually came up with for my Twitter followers. Luckily, if you don't follow me on Twitter, it's very easy to do and totally free, actually. So if you sign up for a subscription of Loot Crate, you just try out the June box. All you have to do is tweet at me telling me who you think is going to win Game of Thrones, like the entire thing, and maybe why they're going to win. You only have so many characters to choose from and also only so many characters to write with on Twitter, so get creative with your word choice. But yeah, send me those tweets and then we'll pick a winner at random. And then the winner, you're gonna be getting obviously your Loot Crate stuff that you just signed up for, but we got you like a free crate of LVLup, which is just nerd clothes. I'm gonna rip this open really quick. So that's one of the things. There's more that you'll get if you win. Mario Brothers scarf, another shirt. Oh, that's pretty cool. Master of the Universe, He-Man style. Another long sleeve shirt. Oh, precious with so many S's. Yeah, Lord of the Rings, Tolkien guys. Like if you like Game of Thrones, you probably would like Lord of the Rings. That's what George R.R. Martin is trying to do. He loves Tolkien and is actually trying to improve on his works. But I mean, this is like the OG. Ooh, boom. Super Mario hilarious socks, which I will wear right now. Boom. Now my feet are warm. But yeah, so the winner will be picked at random, and in addition to your Loot Crate stuff, you'll be getting a free crate of LVLup. So it's a bunch of nerd apparel, or just like cool free clothes. but also you're gonna get the Game of Thrones magnets that I use for weekly power rankings. I'm just gonna send you those directly, a set of mine. And then I'm also gonna send you my personal Stark Direwolf USB flash drive, my own one, and it's not gonna be empty. I'm gonna put all kinds of really interesting things in there related to Game of Thrones and some theories that I also don't wanna state publicly, but I do have about Game of Thrones. I don't wanna go into too much detail about what I'm gonna put on here because I don't wanna ruin the surprise, but it's gonna be awesome stuff. On that flash drive though, one interesting thing I will tell you about is that we're gonna make you your own custom video featuring me, Erik, our director Kylo, answering just whatever question you want or explaining any concepts or theories directly to you, for you, probably about Game of Thrones, but you can ask us about something else. We might not know anything about it, but we'll make that video just for you and it'll also come on that flash drive. Okay, so that's a lot of stuff that you can get. And I know a lot of contests are like, oh, I'll never win that. There's gonna be way too many entries. Trust me, there are not gonna be too many entries for this. I would love it if there were because it would make everybody happy, especially Lootcrate. But yeah, realistically, your odds are gonna be crazy good that you're the person that would get all that stuff. Again, all you have to do is sign up for badass nerd stuff from Lootcrate, tweet at me that you did that and who you think is gonna win Game of Thrones and why, and that's it. We'll talk to the winner via direct message on Twitter. That simple. Okay, so that's it for this episode's breakdown, and I hope you were happy that we got it to you a little bit earlier. That's directly thanks to Lootcrate for helping us do that. To keep up with us in general, follow @NewRockstars on Twitter, follow me @Fimo if you want to talk nerd stuff, or if you have longer stuff to say, you can always hit me up on Facebook at facebook.com/FimoKnows. You guys are the best. I will see you, oh my god, for the epic, amazing episode that's coming. I'm so excited. But thank you guys for everything. Bye.